นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. Somebody was saying the other day that meditation practice is similar to going to the gym. Some days you want to do it, some days you don't. Sometimes you're motivated by guilt. You go to the gym because you've been eating too much or lying around. Sometimes you do meditation because you're feeling guilty about all those negative thoughts you've been carrying around or indulging in various desires, unskillful states of mind perhaps. But other times you have faith, you're inspired, you want to do it, you're motivated. So any kind of training or practice, regular practice is going to be like that because your mind changes, doesn't it? The mood, the mental state changes just as your body changes. Sometimes you're healthy, strong, sometimes you feel weaker, sometimes you're ill, tired. Sometimes mentally tired, sometimes physically tired. One of the ways the Buddha talked about training the mind is he talked about the 5 palas, or strengths of mind. Many of the teachings the Buddha gave are explanations based on his, you might say, perfect understanding of the human mind, and particularly what we need to do to cure or remedy all forms of stress and suffering. And he often emphasized the way different qualities work together. They're like different factors or conditions, supportive conditions that give rise to what we want, which is the end of suffering. Sometimes he'd emphasize a particular quality, you see, like mindfulness is a quality that's always useful. But then other times he'd say, well, you need right view and you need wisdom or panya to uproot the mental defilements that are the cause of suffering. But when he talked about the 5 strengths, the 5 palas, he's talking about 5 qualities which all are strengths in the mind, and kind of hold up the practice through these ups and downs that we have to face, the physical ups and downs, the mental ups and downs. So that's saddha, faith or conviction in the Buddha and his enlightenment and the teachings. Virya means persistence, persistent effort and energy. Sati, mindfulness or recollection. Samadhi, calm, one-pointedness of mind. And then panya, insight, wisdom, discernment. And these 5 qualities we call strengths sometimes, because they're strong, they bring strength to the mind when developed. Just as when you go to the gym and you train with different equipment or doing different activities, you're working on different muscles. And if you work on different muscles, often your whole body benefits. The blood flow, the heart, the breathing and so on all benefits. In the same way you develop these 5 strengths of mind, well, they all influence each other and support each other. And sometimes you say, well, when the 5 strengths or 5 balas are out of balance, that's a sign that something is going to go wrong in your experience. Maybe your thinking will be off, or how you feel, it won't have such a great sense of well-being, or you'll be overwhelmed by more negative emotions because something's missing. Or something is weak. So the obvious one, why the Buddha said mindfulness is at the center, and it's a quality that's always useful, is because it's kind of like your first and last line of defense in the practice. When mindfulness slips away, we lose our awareness, presence of mind, we get overwhelmed by sense objects, which often will stimulate sense desire, overwhelmed by thoughts, views, opinions, feelings, physical feelings, pleasure and pain overwhelm us, and so on. When the mindfulness is gone, then we're unable to reflect and develop wisdom, say, because the mind is too wobbly all over the place when you're not mindful. So you notice that in meditation. When you lose your mindfulness during the course of a period of meditation, you become prey to what we call the hindrances. One obvious one is you start becoming drowsy, falling asleep, or get caught into just anxiety, endless thinking, worrying, anxiety, thinking without purpose, and the kind of thinking that takes away our happiness. Because the nature of anxiety is it agitates the mind. The mind is not still, peaceful, calm. It's the opposite. Or we fall into anger, and the anger overwhelms us. When there's no mindfulness, then these hindrances start flooding into the mind. When mindfulness is strong, when it is a strength and we're practicing it and it's becoming more continuous, well, we've got a way to resist the influence of some of these different mental states, the negative mental states. Where does mindfulness come from? It comes from that persistent effort, virya. You need to put effort into your meditation in order to bring up mindfulness. That's why we practice regularly. Just like if you want to be strong, you go to the gym. If you want your mindfulness to be strong, you need to practice it regularly, and then you have some strength of mind to resist or overcome or avoid falling into different pitfalls and different habits of mind. The wandering mind, the anxious mind, the unhappy mind states that can take over very easily. When mindfulness is strong, when you're with the breath, then you have a certain independence from all these negative thoughts. With that independence, you get a sense of well-being as well, because you're actually separating your mind off from a lot of the more normal habitual thinking, worrying, negativity. You feel better when mindfulness is present. Where does that persistent effort come from? Well, a huge factor in that is faith. You have the right view, the right attitude that it's something worth doing and that you can do it. You notice when your faith in the Buddha and in the Dhamma and the way of practice slips, well, you start having more self-doubt, doubt about the practice, maybe be more self-critical, think, oh, I can't do this, I've got no merit, no barami, no good qualities. It's all right for other people, but I can't do it, and so on. So then you don't put much effort in, not much mindfulness arises, everything becomes weaker. When mindfulness is strong, discernment and insight can arise. Because you're paying attention, you're noticing how things are. You can direct your mind to learn, to look, to learn, to understand things. Whether you're just reflecting on sila, the value of sila and why we keep precepts, or reflecting on karma, cause and result, good karma, bad karma, or more deeply, reflecting on the three characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta. You need mindfulness, presence of mind, you need to be paying attention in order to see the three characteristics in your own physical, mental experience. To see a thought arise, pass away, you have to pay attention to it and have that sense of separation between the knower and the known, the mind that knows with mindfulness, and then the thought that's coming up into the mind and then disappearing. Insight into impermanence needs mindfulness, so they support each other. We lose our mindfulness because we get caught out and lost in different moods. But when your mindfulness is stronger, you get less lost, less caught out. So mindfulness and wisdom support each other. They become stronger through the practice. If you get used to meditating regularly, then you can look back at your own experience of the mind, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching. You can see what's going on because you have presence of mind as it gets stronger. Generally, the hardest thing to sort out when you're meditating is what we call sensual desire. Because it's so habitual, we've been clinging to all kinds of things, different sense objects that we like since we've been born into the world. They may develop, mature, change over time, but just clinging to sights, sound, taste, smell, touch, it's just so habitual we don't even notice. Every time we are consciously paying attention, seeing something, attending to our eyes, and eye consciousness arises. It's interesting, likable, desirable, or undesirable, boring. You get one reaction or another. But it happens so fast we don't even notice. We need the mindfulness, the strength of mindfulness and the strength of insight to keep looking, observing and understand what's going on. Where do our moods come from? Why am I in a good mood? Why am I in a unskillful, miserable mood, perhaps? Unhappy mood? Why is the mind still, feeling calm? Why is the mind agitated? What's leading to what? And you need to pay attention, you need the mindfulness, and then train in looking and understanding inwardly what's going on. In our lives we tend to be brought up to always be looking outward to the world. We love to get to know about other people, right? We like to know about other people, what they've done in their lives, whether it's our friends, relatives, or even people we never meet, celebrities or people in the news, people we admire, people we hate. Even people we hate, we like to know all about them for some reason. We spend a lot of our time getting to know about other people, other things, external things, and then we miss what's going on in our own mind. But your happiness, your suffering, the peaceful mind, the not peaceful mind, that's for you to know in yourself, isn't it? Your happiness is not arising in someone else's mind. That's their business. They may have some superficial link to our happiness. If it's someone you attach to, or if they're happy, that may make you happy temporarily. But the actual feeling of pleasure, happiness, or pain, or misery, or discontent, that arises in your mind, not in someone else's mind. So in order to understand that and understand cause and effect and how attachment forms and why we suffer, you have to look at your own mind, get to know that. Pay attention. That's why you need the mindfulness. Even other people who are wise, like good examples or wise teachers, or good examples, people who live in a way that we might feel is inspiring and helpful to us, you still can only know them on a more superficial, in a superficial way, the appearance, how they appear to you, what they say, what they do. In order to free ourselves from our own reactions or attachments to pleasure and pain through these senses, we need to observe our own sense contact, sense desire as it arises. Where do these good moods and bad moods come from? And that requires the mindfulness and then the discernment and wisdom, investigating. Sometimes we even say, when you're jealous or don't like somebody, if they're happy, I'm in a bad mood because that person I don't like. They're happy, they're successful, but you don't even know if they're truly happy because that's their experience, not yours. Or if someone you love is happy or unhappy, you don't know absolutely for sure because that's how they're feeling, not how you're feeling. You can make an educated guess from the way they look, the way they talk, what they do, what happens to them. But still, they're feeling that, not you. You feel in your own mind based on your own experience, in your own body, based on physical nature of your body, what's going on, and then your mind, what you're thinking. Just what you think already will change your mood, won't it? If you think of something you like, you start to feel happy. You think of something you hate, you feel miserable. You can experiment with this as you meditate, sitting, walking meditation. Just ask yourself, what am I thinking about right now? That's the establishing of mindfulness. Is it wholesome or unwholesome? If it's wholesome, why do we call it wholesome? We say kusala kamma. We should be able to notice some feeling of pleasure or contentment, peace of mind accompanying that particular train of thought or that emotional state. What's unwholesome? Well, unwholesome is accompanied by some kind of mental agitation, maybe even feelings of mental pain, often prompted by physical pain as well. And that's something you have to look at and understand from your own experience. So you need that strength of mindfulness and then the strength of introspection, discernment directed inward, to see that, to know that. If your mindfulness, your discernment improves, you might even notice, well, even the pleasures can become a cause of pain because they don't last. Back to contemplating impermanence. Maybe even set yourself the task to answer the question, what is permanent in my life? What lasts? What is lasting happiness? There are many kinds of happiness we have. Certainly sensual happiness is quite easy to find in the world these days. Maybe just something simple like when you're tired, lying down. When you're hot, cooling down, you're cold, warming up. When you're hungry, eating food that you like the taste of. We do that every day, those kind of things. It's already teaching us something, but most of the time we miss it because we're not that mindful, we're not reflective maybe. Partly because we're always in a rush. Nowadays everyone's in a rush, got so many things to do, so many activities. Get up, got to do this, go there, go here. If you've got kids, even more things to look after. Families, jobs. Because we're in a rush, we tend to be always letting our mind run away from us, not paying so much attention to how we feel, the thoughts running through our mind, the feelings that are coming out. We miss a lot. That's why it's useful to have times where you just stop, sit meditation, cultivate mindfulness in a direct way. And at first it's hard because to bring up mindfulness of an object such as the breath, well, you have to resist all the other stuff. You have to not run with all the plans and the expectations and the anticipations of pleasures and the reactions with aversion to things you don't like that will fill your mind. You have to not go with all that. You have to notice it and let it go. You need mindfulness and then some wisdom to do that. That's why a lot of people find meditation quite hard. You have to go against habits of mind. A lot of those habits are very deeply ingrained. We often veer between extremes, so you meditate for a while and you say, oh, I'm not peaceful, so I've got to really do this. And then we kind of clench our teeth and sit up straight and push and push and push, try to squash our mind to stay with our object, and get rid of all the stuff that's annoying us or distracting us. But you can't sustain that for very long. It's too extreme. Or we kind of punish ourselves, maybe set ourselves some goal or give ourselves some practice. I'm going to meditate for an hour without moving. I'm not going to move at all, and I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to do it because we're so angry with ourselves for having failed so many times before. So instead of cultivating these 5 strengths of mind together, it's more like just push, 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 forcing with willpower, maybe a lot of aversion, a lot of self-view. And often the mind is actually quite weak because it's coming from the wrong place. More aversion to our own lack of peace or lack of success in the practice, maybe. Other times we're going the opposite way, we just give up, can't be bothered, become careless, heedless, lazy, depressed maybe because we just tried and it didn't work, and so we just give up. If I can't do it, then I'm just not going to even try, and we just give up altogether. We veer from the one extreme to the other so often in our meditation. Sometimes looking at these 5 strengths of mind, seeing where we need to adjust will help. And the obvious one is virya, effort. Too much effort, it's too difficult, makes ourselves uncomfortable. Too little effort, and we're not getting anywhere at all. Right effort is continuous effort, regular, continuous, persistent effort, but also the quality of effort, whether it's mixed up with a lot of desire for results, desire to get something, or aversion for past failings, faults that we've observed. We have to observe that as well. What's the quality of the motivation and the kind of effort? In the time of the Buddha, there was Venerable Sona, who was famous for having to learn the right balance in effort. He was from a good family, you might say, wealthy family, so he'd had quite a pampered upbringing. They say his skin was so soft. It was beautiful white, soft skin, very delicate, because he'd never had to do any work, physical work in his life. Always had the best food, the best clothes, the best comfortable life. But he had very strong faith in the Buddha. Went forth, became a monk. He was determined to get enlightened, but his strengths of mind, his mindfulness, his insight wasn't quite balanced and wasn't quite developed yet. So he just went for it. In a way, very praiseworthy. He started walking meditation. When he sat, he wasn't very peaceful, so he just did walking meditation. They say his feet were so delicate, he had this soft, furry hair on his feet, like a baby. Basically, his skin was like a baby. They'd walk up and down out of faith in the Buddha. So he had faith, he had effort, he's walking up and down. He walked all night, many times, until his walking path was like a deep furrow, like a trench, just walking back and forth on the earth. So gradually wore away the earth till it was a trench. He wasn't enlightened. Probably, particularly his mindfulness and particularly his discernment, his wisdom wasn't fully developed. So eventually he succumbed to his feeling of disappointment with himself, his depression. Put all this effort in but still got nowhere. It's a very common kind of suffering, isn't it? We try hard in something, when we don't quite get the result we want, we blame ourselves, we turn on ourselves and just want to give up. Rather than looking and learning, seeing what we need to adjust in our approach, just go to a more kind of negative mind state, disappointment, aversion, depression. So he sat down, miserable. But the Buddha, meditating out of compassion for his student, the Buddha knew that his student was having trouble, but he could see he had great potential. He just needed to tweak, adjust his approach a bit. So the Buddha quickly travelled to Venerable Sona. The way the Buddha quickly travels is he meditates and probably enters fourth jhana, and he appeared right in front of him. What you might call teleporting. So the Buddha appears and teaches him what the Buddha himself had learnt through his own practice before he was enlightened. Right effort needs to be balanced, not too forced, because that's unnatural, not too relaxed, because that won't get you anywhere. And he needs to be just right, like the three strings of the lute. Too loose doesn't sound good, too tight doesn't sound good, just right sounds good. So with the more balanced approach, Venerable Sona eventually became enlightened. In meditation, we need to learn from our experience, and we can even turn our failures and difficulties and obstacles into something good. When you are caught up into sense desire, endlessly thinking about the next meal, the next activity, the next bit of pleasure you're going to indulge in, the next distraction to take you away from the current situation, maybe you're restless or bored. Even that can teach you something, those desires. You have to maybe pause and ask yourself, these desires, are they permanent or impermanent? Where do they get me? Following desire, where does it get you? Desire, if it's unwholesome, it just breeds more desire, more discontent. You get the thing you want, and then very quickly afterwards you're restless, looking again. There's no end to desire when you follow it, when you give into it. When your faculties and these spiritual qualities are weak, you give in to desire every time. So it gets harder to let go, harder to see it for what it is, as impermanent. It's not self, it's just a desire. Desire is just desire. But you need to bring up the mindfulness and maybe just go in small steps at first. So you notice certain desires. A lot of them are very habitual, repetitive. Certain addictions, obsessions. Just we keep returning to that same old spot. I want this. If I get this, I'll be happy. Maybe take small steps to establish mindfulness and let go. See, this is just another desire, filling the mind, filling the void. What happens if I let it go? Is there any danger if I let go of this desire, if I just ignore it? You're not going to die from letting go of desire. The desire will die, not you. If you let it go, sometimes we're too smart. We say, oh, it'll just come back again. And we get annoyed again, annoyed with ourselves, give up. But that's where you need some strength of faith, conviction in the path, persistent effort, mindfulness. And as the calm, the one-pointedness improves, those little moments of mindfulness join up. Then the desire doesn't just fall back into your mind, overwhelm you again. Maybe it disappears for a long time. And also your relationship to that desire as wisdom arises, it modifies. So desires that you used to find very difficult to let go of, are always overcoming you, after a while they're not so powerful. Maybe even they become undesirable in the way of Dhamma. And I don't mean you find the desire, it causes you aversion, but you just see it as not desirable anymore. It's not desirable to have endless desire in your mind because it's not peaceful. So you can't be bothered with it. Everyone has probably had that experience sometimes because there's all kinds of things we've had in our life that filled the mind. Various pleasures, you get bored with things when you realise it's not that good, it's not that satisfying. Food or games, or all kinds of pleasures that previously seemed so enticing, so interesting. If you really bring up mindfulness and discernment, then the way you look at the world and these things changes. Your mind experiences more freedom, then they don't bother you so much. That's like the strength of mindfulness, the strength of wisdom is established. But you start from small steps. You have to bring up the mindfulness, say no to a certain way of thinking that you love to get into when you're meditating. It can be aversion or it could be desire for pleasure. You let it go. You let it go once, you can let it go again and again and again. If you keep practicing, you're patient enough, put enough effort in, then those small steps become the strength of the mind. The mind becomes more aloof from the distractions or the hindrances. If it's sleepiness, you just go, oh, no, I'm not going to let myself fall asleep. Whatever works to do that. And one of the reasons you struggle with sleepiness is because you like sleep. Another desire. There's a desire mixed in there. The turning off, the numbing of the mind. Maybe you're bored or upset with something else, so it's easier just to go to sleep, go to drowsiness. You even have to turn away from that desire, that indulgence. Which you can, but you have to keep working at it until the effort, the mindfulness, the discernment is established, it's strong, and then you don't drop into sleepiness. And then the mind can become still, bright, and then it's kind of, at least for a while, it will be self-sustaining. When your mind becomes bright, still, happy, sleepiness is no longer a problem. because the mind is strong. Aversion is no longer a problem when the mindfulness is strong, as you feel you have a sense of well-being, the mind is happy, content within itself, even when there's painful feelings in your body or other things around you that trigger aversion. They don't really bother you because your mind doesn't want to go to aversion. It's tired of getting irritated and angry. Probably one of the harder powers or strengths of mind to develop is samadhi. We have little bits of it to start with, but to develop sustained, strong samadhi is difficult. You have to practice. But when you experience samadhi, then your mind is working at its best, and discernment can come from that because you're able to look at things without falling into attachment, craving, desire. See the way things are. You can see desire for what it is. It's just mental states that arise, pass away, and are not worth very much in themselves. So if you see something as worthless, well, you let it go. Like someone was saying the other day that nobody uses coins anymore because there's so little you can buy with these small coins. When I was a kid, you could, even if you had 1 penny, I'm brought up in UK, 1 penny you could buy things with it. A few pennies could buy quite a lot. Shows you how old I am. Now a few pennies or a few cents means nothing, so you're not bothered. If you drop a few cents, you can't even bother picking up sometimes. Desires, attachments are like that when seen from a place of samadhi, discernment, wisdom. You'd rather have the happiness of a peaceful mind than follow the object of that desire, whatever it is. Food is less important when you develop some samadhi. If you're really peaceful, you have piti and sukha arise in samadhi, then you don't even think of eating at all. Many meditators I know, they've reached a point in their practice, if they're peaceful in the morning, they don't even want to eat food. Food is too coarse. Rather just have the piti and sukha of the mind. You can't go on like that forever, but at least for a while. Enjoy the samadhi rather than go looking for the coarse food of the body. I once went to Taiwan and visited one old meditation master who was very kind, spent the day talking to him about his practice. He said when his practice was at its best and his samadhi was at his strongest, he was on retreat in a cave. He'd just eat a few apples a week, a few bits of fruit. Every week someone would bring him, offer him some fruit. The rest of the time he wouldn't eat. He'd just meditate. He said it was very bright, peaceful. He said he ate his piti, consumed his piti, rapture, rather than coarse food. And you can't go on like that forever, but for periods of time you can, when your mind's peaceful. Another monk I used to live with, he was reflecting on the 32 parts of the body, so he'd eat 32 mouthfuls of food every day. He said whether he was feeling hungry or not, he just took it on as a practice. He said if he felt 32 mouthfuls of food wasn't enough, and he was pretty skinny, he said if 32 mouthfuls wasn't enough, he'd just eat his rapture after that. He did it as an offering to the Buddha. Not everyone has to do that practice. You have to experiment, see what works for you. But there is plenty of scope for experimenting to see what helps you to let go of distractions, desires, attachments, If you don't try a bit, then you'll never know. If you're still, you come to your meditation, you're just thinking, oh, I hope this session ends quickly. Just want to stop and get out of here. Well, of course, many people will be like that, but maybe bring up the opposite. Say, oh, why am I so not peaceful today? What can I do about it? Where can I strengthen my effort, strengthen my mindfulness, strengthen my wisdom? If you find it hard to sit or walk meditation, then that's a sign that something is weak, isn't it? Just like if you go to the gym and you can't do anything, you need to practice more, train your muscles, build up the muscles. Same with the mind. So maybe I'll leave you with those reflections tonight, and we'll end there.